All right. Okay. Here's the scenario. You are super excited. You've been searching on Zillow and you find the perfect property, but you're in a lease. We oftentimes get these calls as agents, and they're from good friends who say, listen, I found finally the perfect house and I want to buy it, but I'm not sure if I can get out of my lease. So some things to look for in breaking your lease or possibly altering your lease in order to go find your dream home. So maybe also some ways to think about this as well. Because what I want to do is take you from sort of the short-term view of can I break the lease to the bigger picture view of is this the right house? So number one, when you're looking at your lease, why don't you look for a couple of things? One, there's a termination clause. And two, it's the notice that you have to give in order to get out. Do you have a 30-day notice? You have a 15-day notice? You have a 60-day notice? What does that look like? And two, when does the lease naturally terminate? And you may be in a month-to-month situation, which is typically your best situation. So understand the terms of your lease in order to know if you can get out of the lease. Now, if you're asking this question, you probably are not in a month-to-month reality. Let's say, for example, you've got 6 months left on your lease, but you find the perfect house. What can you do then? You've got 6 months, you're locked in. You owe it per the lease to be paying whether or not you're living there during that 6 months. That's what you promised to the landlord. And you don't have any special out clause in there. That's what your termination is. And you got a 30 or 60-day notice to give. So here's what you do. First thing you need to ask yourself before you even have a conversation with anyone else is, if I can't get out of this lease, what is the cost of me staying in the lease until the end and paying for it? And when does my mortgage actually kick in? Here's the thing. Your mortgage is typically paid in arrears, which means that you're paying it at the end of the month that you've been in the property. So let's say you find the perfect house in January. You don't settle on that house for 45 days, mid-February. That means your first mortgage payment is at the end of your first full month in the property, which is the end of March. So now that's half of those 6 months taken care of from a cash flow standpoint. So that helps you calculate cash flow. And basically what that means is that you're on the hook for 3 months of double payment, mortgage and rent. Now, understand that if you can kick this out further, maybe the seller doesn't need you to move in a whole lot sooner. And maybe you can say, okay, let's settle mid-March. And maybe I'm going to give you a rent back, seller, because you're waiting on new construction to be built. And they're in it for another 2 months. And then you acquire the property. And by the way, they're renting back from you and paying you your mortgage. Hopefully you've negotiated that. And now you're at the end of your lease, or very close to the end of your lease, and you have maybe a month of double payment. So understanding how this works is also really, really helpful in understanding the timing of how you're going to line up your dominoes. So do you need to break your lease or not? Understand the timing first. The final thing that I want to talk to you about is, as a renter, you can always go to your landlord. This is why I really, really like renting direct from landlords. If you're dealing with sort of a property manager and the landlord is very, very remote, you're less likely to be able to get somebody to alter things for you. If you're dealing directly with somebody who maybe lives nearby and who's very reasonable, I did this on one of my first properties. When I bought my first home, I was in a lease. I had another 6 months, and I went to the owner. I said, listen, let's do this. If I find you someone to, at the very least, take over my lease, or to pay the same amount or more, and to give you at least as long a term as I'm on the hook for or longer, will you allow me to do that? And he said, absolutely. I ended up finding him someone who was going to give him 2 more years of the same rent that I was going to give him. He was tickled pink, and we were on our way. and he allowed me to break my obligation to that lease. So go and have a conversation with the landlord. Before you do that, understand what your terms are and understand what the timing is going to look like. And that's how to understand whether or not you should or can break your lease. See you in the next one.